It may be 100 degrees outside, but it is nice and cool inside Nationwide Arena. Welcome to a Prospects Camp edition of On the Bench with Columbus Wired. I'm Dave Seaman. This is Justin Boggs. And Prospects Camp comes to an end with a basically kind of like a shootout or a modified skills competition that really showed the young talent that's coming to Columbus in the near future.
Certainly, and of course we saw some of the talent that we've seen already here on the ice at Nationwide Arena with Ryan Johansson as well as Cam Atkinson, but we certainly got to see a lot of Ryan Murray this past week, Oscar Dansk, who's a second-round goaltender, as well as Boone Jenner, who I think all potentially could be in the Blue Jackets lineup here in the next year or so.
Yeah, and the funny thing about this year's Prospects Camp is not necessarily what's going on the ice or going on with the prospects, but obviously here we are now a week or so after the draft. Free agency has begun, and, well, Rick Nash is still a member of the Blue Jackets.
Absolutely, and, you look at all the talk that's happening in the league right now on where is Nash going, and what we're hearing is that general managers are becoming frustrated at the process, that Howson hasn't lowered his offer, that Nash hasn't changed his list of teams that he has given to Howson. So right now it seems like the two sides are in a holding pattern, and who knows how ugly it might get, but what the rumors and the speculation is right now is that this could go on for quite a while, maybe even drag now into training camp in September.
Well, I think there's 2 points. A lot of people thought that once Zach Parise, once he signed, and he signed, of course, with Minnesota earlier this week, a lot of people thought, okay, now the ball's going to start rolling. Well, it's been 4 or 5 days now, and there has been no movement. And Scott Howson has said many a times this week, yeah, there really is no movement, nothing really going on. And what's interesting is, as we said before, Howson doesn't have to trade Rick Nash, the other side of it is Rick Nash could stay as a Blue Jacket. I mean, he's the one that, if he wants out so bad, he could expand his list, and I think that has really tied the hands of Scott Howson.
Certainly, and well, we have to keep things in perspective around here, because think about for a month there, we thought that it was Howson that went to Nash asking for the trade. It wasn't until Howson came to us and said in February that it was actually Nash who came to us asking for the trade. So sometimes you have to use that filter to remind yourself, hey, sometimes what you hear isn't always true. Perhaps Nash isn't so bitter at Columbus. We don't really know. Nash publicly, all he has said is that
nothing. He didn't say anything since March.
Since April. But you look at what he said in February. What he said was, I want to help this team any way I can. And I thought that maybe if I, sacrifice myself to another team, maybe, and, of course, go win in the process somewhere else, that I would actually be helping the Blue Jackets. If that mindset is true, he may very well be a Blue Jacket in the fall and be happy to be so. But again, we don't really know what's happening inside his mind because he's not saying anything.
Well, what we do know is that the Blue Jackets were active in free agency a week ago. Mark Mathot was traded to Ottawa for Nick Foligno, who then a couple days later signed a 3-year, $9 million contract. Foligno, high prospect, but somebody who will probably play in the top 6 with Columbus.
Absolutely. He's a 24-year-old forward. He's now signed for 3 years. Really, you look, the ceiling is pretty high for him. He's a first-round draft pick from 6 years ago. Really looks like a strong talent for Ottawa. He's a guy capable of probably giving you 50, 60 points a year. I look at him as kind of almost like the replacement for Antoine Vermette. You look at what Columbus got from Vermette 4 years ago from Ottawa, and he was kind of that consistent 50-point-a-year kind of guy. I could see Foligno possibly filling in that role, but of course here in Columbus it's a different story because we don't really know who's going to be putting the puck in the net for Columbus this year.
Well, and Foligno, he can play on the power play, he can play full strength, he can play on the penalty kill. I mean, he's a well-rounded athlete. Of course, the Blue Jackets also kind of replacing Mark Mathot with Adrian Aucoin, who's a very, a veteran of the NHL and someone who pretty much knows that his role is to come in and kind of help the younger guys like Ryan Murray and John Moore, thank you. Like Ryan Murray and John Moore come in and help them become better NHL players.
Yeah, and you look at the defensive core right now, you have to figure this top 7's pretty set right now. You look at, when we last joined you, we kind of talked about where the defense was at that time when they brought in Murray, and we said, yes, it was set. Of course, we speculated Mathot might be on the move, and of course he was. but now you have O'Coin filling in that spot, and this is a 1-year deal. O'Coin's not going to be around forever. He's here to sort of mentor these guys, and as I said, you have to like where the defense is headed with this squad because of who they've added with Jack Johnson and James Wisniewski.
Well, and you talk about the defense since we were last with you. Nikitin also signing, I believe it was a 3-year deal as well. So Nikitin's back in the fold. Also, Jared Bull has since signed, re-signed with the Blue Jackets. So, the team is sort of taking shape as far as who we think will be there, who we don't think will be there. But, like we talked with the coaches after prospects camp, until we know where 61 is, it's going to be tough to plan for the season.
Right. We just talked to assistant coach Dan Hynode. He was the NHL coach kind of watching over the camp today. And he pretty much said, the coaches haven't really sat down to discuss lineups yet for the year. It is still kind of early for that. But certainly, if you know where Rick Nash is headed, or if you already had that settled and knowing what you would get for him, you could really start going down the lines. Okay, here's your top line, here's your second line. You can't do that right now. This team could look fairly different, especially if Howson gets what he wants. I mean, we're talking about perhaps several NHL-ready players for Nash, if that's what they can get, and that could really change the complexion of the team when you take out your top player and add in a couple new players to the lineup.
And I guess probably kind of to wrap things up, the other cloud that's kind of hanging over not only the Columbus Blue Jackets but the NHL, of course, is the labor deal. The CBA ends in September. The NHLPA and the owners have been meeting, and thus far it would appear that they're at least on the same page as far as what issues they want to work on. And it seems like right now there's progress, but it's also very early on.
Sure. I mean, I think what you're going to be looking at both sides feel like they're kind of getting gypped on the revenue share right now, and the players obviously want their share, but you see how much since the last CBA, how much the cap has increased. I mean, we went from somewhere around a $40 million cap to now almost a $70 million cap in just a matter of a few years. So that cap has really increased. The owners are trying to get control of that. They're trying to say, we're not really that strong of a league. We're not on television.
It's not the NBA.
Much. This isn't the NBA. We're not on the front page of newspapers everywhere across the country. So the owners are trying to get control of that, how much that cap keeps increasing. And I think a couple other smaller issues. You're going to see player safety brought up a lot with all the concussion that's going on, and insurance and liability, as we kind of saw with the NFL labor agreement, where the NFL had to kind of go back and make some concessions on insurance for players after they leave the league, and that was kind of a big part. And as well as, I think something that hasn't really been discussed much, but I think might come up, is the age of draft picks. Right now we're talking about 18-year-olds who are getting drafted, and I think the owners would like to maybe see that bumped up a little bit. There's push from both the college ranks as well as the CHL to maybe increase that age just a little bit, because it helps those programs, but as well, it also gives the owners and the management a better chance to evaluate these players. You get a better idea of what a player is going to be like when they're 19 or 20 years old, rather than when they come in when they're 18. The players are against that because they want that opportunity to be able to come right in at 18 years old, and as you see with a few guys like Stamkos, Rick Nash, a few others, Crosby, they can come right in and help the league, but those players are fewer and far between.
Well, and the other thing I think that you're going to see, and I know that the league and the owners and the players, or the league and the owners, all had a realignment in the works, of course, last December, and then the NHLPA kind of said, no, let's take a look at that. But I do think that's going to be a part of the CBA. I do think that there's still going to be some sort of realignment. There's going to be some sort of balanced schedule, where each team comes into each building once a year. Whether or not Columbus ends up in the Eastern Conference, stays in the West, moves away from Detroit, enters the same division with Minnesota. I mean, there's a lot up in the air, but that's obviously another hot button topic that will probably be discussed and potentially negotiated during this CBA.
Right, and the big question is, should that even be a collective bargaining? I mean, we're talking about travel, which of course affects these players and so forth, but I mean, at the end of the day, what really it boiled down to was how unfair the playoff system was going to be. How in one conference, or essentially one conference, you had a 8 out of 14 chance of getting in the playoffs, and then on another side you had an 8 out of 16 chance.
8 out of 7. Or 7 teams. There's 2 7 states.
Yeah. So you look at how the odds were. it played out to where some of these teams are like, no, we don't, or some of these players are like, no, we don't want to sacrifice the unequal chance of getting to the playoffs for a balanced travel schedule.
Well, and again, the simple solution would be move Columbus or Detroit to the Eastern Conference, move Winnipeg to the West. Phoenix is that situation seems to have settled down. They're not they're not leaving the desert. At least it doesn't appear that way.
Winning helps.
Winning helps. We still call it Columbus West. With all the former Jackets there, but it just seems like there could be a very simple solution to that. But then again, if you move Columbus to the east, then you upset Detroit, vice versa.
Right. So especially if Phoenix goes east. I mean, if you put a team in Quebec City, for instance, or somewhere else in Ontario, that's another Eastern Conference team right there. So, if you you just switch out Winnipeg and them, I mean, you're back to where you started.
It's kind of gives me a headache just thinking about it. So, we all, of course, appreciate everybody joining us with Columbus Wired, checking out our stuff. We'll be with you throughout the summer with writing and videos as we get you ready for the start of training camp, which generally is the second week of September. And, I mean, we're really only about 8 weeks away from that, which means we're about 10 weeks away from exhibition hockey. And, I mean, time flies.
Yeah, hard to think about hockey when it's 105 degrees outside.
Absolutely. So, for Justin, I'm Dave. We'll see you next time.